And then another part of this whole Brazil, this recent UFO crash, quote unquote crash in Brazil, is this thing right here. The part of the map, if you go on Google Maps and you go to this exact spot, people are claiming that for some reason, this part of the map is completely whited out. And it's like the shape of a flying saucer in a movie.
And here's what's funny.
But why is that
GT.
part? Why is it blacked out? Why is it whited out like that?
One of the guys actually said that it's a sun glint. But what's interesting
like
is
it's a shiny roof. It's being reflected, but you can see there's kind of a flare.
no, it looks to me like it was cut out of there somehow. Like it's been digitally.
Yeah, like they cut it out.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, because of the pixelation. If it was if it was like a lens flare or a reflection from a bright, shiny roof or something, it would be kind of like those upper edges. It would be like a kind of a blurred edge, not a pixelated edge with a shadow around
Looking like it was cut, literally.
That's Google Maps.
This
That's
is Google
Maps.
Earth right here.
Yeah, Google
Earth.
Same thing.
Yeah. Now
Google Earth, you can see more topographical.
And that's where they're saying that the crash is at?
This is exactly where they're saying the crash was at, yeah. Right in Fragoso. In
That's
Rio.
just outside of Rio, yeah.
Right outside of Rio, yeah. So I don't know how the fuck to explain that either.
Well, I'll tell you what's kind of funny. And if you look at the shape of that cut and you look at the shape of the one that the pilot in the Navy is chasing, they look very similar. Very similar to that.
How do we see what the pilot in the Navy... Oh, in the video.
In the video.
In those videos that were released by the Pentagon.
Correct.
Okay.
And it looks like a kind of like a top, but it looks like a UFO, a saucer shape, but it's got that odd, peculiar something in the middle of it bump.
Yeah, that's super strange. And is this... I don't know if this has been seen anywhere else on Google Maps. A blip like this. Has it?
They talk about this. They talk
Okay.
about this in great detail. But again, because they don't really have a whole lot to look at or to talk to.
Who was talking about it again?
This was somebody on YouTube that
Okay.
pulled this up. And I'll send you the link to it.
Okay.
That basically just kind of outlines what they think's going on, because they actually at some point in the Instagram I'm looking at, looks like they launch rockets, and you hear them going off in the background. And again, it's Brazil is very militant in their thinking. The White House has actually missiles and buildings around them, so if an aircraft tried to crash into it, they could knock that thing out of the sky. I don't see why the Brazilians wouldn't have something similar to that, especially because we work with the Brazilians a lot. We trust them. Listen, at the end of the day, that we're all on the same team.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked up to think that if a UFO actually crashed in Brazil, the first thing human beings do is start fucking shooting it.
I wouldn't put it past. Listen, with this whole
we are fucking barbarians.
Look at the coronavirus. Look how many people are buying into the whole mask thing. And I know there's some people out there that hate me for saying that, but I got bad news for you. All that does is prevent you from giving it. Doesn't prevent you from getting it coming through your eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
It prevents you from like if you cough or you sneeze, it keeps particles and whatever germs away from people around you.
And again, looking at this, it was supposed to be 2.2 million people that were going to be killed. And I think I'm sure in looking at some of the information I've seen on the virus, I actually saw where Pennsylvania, the hospital there, had to deduct 200 people that they said that had died from coronavirus that didn't die. So I'm sure there's some skewed numbers out there. I see that some of the hospitals are getting subsidized by the federal government if they have got a lot of coronavirus patients there.
Yeah, I read that somewhere too in like Mexico that they're getting paid if they report like high numbers of that.
Well, no, every hospital is getting paid. If you have a death from coronavirus, it's something to the effect of like $30,000 versus a regular death is like $8,000.
Wow.
So if someone's sick and a hospital reports that as a COVID, they get 30 to like 10 times the amount of money
they would have normally got
from the government.
And that's kind of
that's why the numbers are skewed. Nobody knows. Nobody
No.
really knows any of these numbers.
90,000 people have died. I'm like, listen, I don't want one person to die. I think when you start going back and looking at it also, that a large percentage of these are these retirement facilities.
Yeah.
So there's currently 1.6 million cases in the U.S. and today, as of today's Memorial Day, the 25th, and there's 97,600 deaths total. So almost 100,000.
And like I say, I don't want to see anybody die, but it certainly isn't 2.2 million people.
Yeah,
right.
That came out. And again, most of the people that are dying are people who have had high blood pressure. They suffer from all kinds of health issues.
The average age of death from this is higher than the average age of mortality in the U.S. Period.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, when it first broke out, I went to the CDC and I was looking at influenza last year, and they showed 34,000 people died, and about 900,000 people were admitted to the hospital.
Right.
At this point, I think we were just approaching on this side of the bay with the virus about 30 or 35,000. But at the time, I said, listen, it's no different than what was taking place last year. And oh, by the way, if you're not practicing clean hygiene by washing your hands and doing all the
been doing this a long time
yeah.
ago.
Well, I went to the gym the other day and I laughed because when I walked inside, the guy wanted to take my temperature, and I said, Bob, let me ask you this: how many times have you had a fever and felt like going to the gym? And he goes, well, I don't want to get out of my house. I said, exactly. Yeah. He goes, listen, it's just we're going through the stages. We have a lot of elderly people also that under the sneaker program. I think it's called Blue Sneakers for the elderly. What is it? Silver sneakers. And they are allowed to, come into the gym, and these are much older people, and I would probably say, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's
anybody at that age could be at risk. But
they
again,
shouldn't be in there.
I wouldn't say, listen, again, if you don't feel good, don't come in. If you
Right.
feel fine, come on down to the gym and train. Get back to where it was.
Right. I mean, the problem is people don't like to follow other people's rules, and at the end of the day, it's these private businesses. If they want to take your temperature or if they want you to wear a mask,
you got to do it.
They have the right to fucking tell you to do that.
Sure.
Go to another gym if you don't want to do it.
Absolutely.
I mean, people just want to like bitch and complain like it's my constitutional right to come into your gym or to shop at your store. No, it's not. No. It's someone's business, someone's private business.
Like I say, I mean, I get it. At the end of the day, if you're at risk, everybody needs to keep that in mind.
Yeah, for sure.
But I again, at the same time, there's something else that's going on, because as these events kind of unfold in the bigger picture, what is really going on? I mean, you look at, like I say, the Skinwalker Ranch and how all of a sudden amazing this place has become. And you go to Ancient Aliens now on the History Channel, and they've got every guy in the world on there who's talking about Machu Picchu and Tikapoo and all the different places in Peru. Mm-hmm. They just found some skulls out there that don't have a Sagittarius line, which separates the center of the skull. And they initially said that what they do is the inhabitants of this location, and they're going back probably 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, would actually do a thing called binding, and they would tie the head so that the skull became long. And the professor who was teaching the class was like, well, why were they doing that? They just didn't do that one day because they woke up and felt like, hey, we want to tie our kids' heads and make them real long like this. Yeah. He said there had been extraterrestrials there that had this elongated skull, and that they found these skulls. These skulls were 40% heavier, 25% bigger than a regular skull, and had no Sagittarius line that went down the center of the skull. And he
really?
And he goes, it also didn't have any mitochondria DNA. Because everything on the planet has that. And again, I'm like, well, why isn't this big news? Where is the shock and awe over these events and these stories? I mean, are we so used to it now because we've seen every type of, sci-fi show on TV from Star Trek?
So nobody believes anything anymore.
The thing is there's scientists out there and researchers who have had their research sort of established already. And when new information or new discoveries come out, these people want to discredit it because their egos are attached to their discoveries and to what is already accepted.
Sure.
So if you've devoted your life to one ideology, to one scientific ideology, and someone else comes in 20 years later and says, no, you guys are missing something, then it's sad that their ego kind of gets attached to it and they just want to like discredit that person or say, oh, that's a pseudoscientist.
Oh yeah. And I think that's obviously that's a great point, because I see that going on a lot. Like if you look at the Great Sphinx in Egypt, and they talk about how old the Sphinx is, and a geologist actually came out and said, no, it's actually much older than that. And they said, why is that? And he said, because what we're looking at was done with water, not wind. And this was erosion on the side of the actual Sphinx.
Right.
And he came down and said, well, when it's water erosion, it goes one way, and when it's wind erosion, it runs actually lateral to the ground. Mm-hmm. And he said this was done by water. And so if you took the planet and kind of reverse wobbled it, they could go back almost 10,000 years to when that area was extremely wet. Mm-hmm. And he believes that's when the Sphinx was actually put up. It was put up before the Egyptians were there. The Egyptians kind of came into it after the fact.
Right.
So
same thing with Machu Picchu in Peru.
Absolutely.
They say that the people there basically came there and just moved in. They didn't create it. because there's no possible way humans, it would take like 30,000, 3,000 humans to carry one of those, or I don't know how many people they said it would take. But basically those things are 10 tons, 20-ton bricks.
And I thought they came from two mountaintops away. You know, were they trying to convince me they dragged them, 3,000 miles, even though you could see the other mountaintop they came from, but they dragged them that far. When I had other guys say, well, the Egyptians used rope and they used these logs, and I'm like, who was making the rope? How long was that rope? Was it really that strong? Like, 3,000 men could pull on it and
yeah.
Come on, man, really?
Yeah.
There's something bigger going on. You look at how much they talk today, and they really associate the pyramids with astronauts. Look at the Mayans. The Mayans had a calendar, a 30-day calendar. We liked it so much that we adopted that calendar. And the interesting thing is that the Mayans accounted for the wobble that the Earth has.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you do that? How do you understand there's a wobble when you don't get off the planet? So there's something else that's going on. Why are there pyramids? There's more pyramids in South America than all of Egypt. There's about 10,000 pyramids through South America. And South America had no contact with Egypt. How did they know to make that same type of building?
Right, the same design.
The same design. It's using, whether this was to generate power, or it was to communicate, or it was set up as a, hey, this is the time of year that we were going to plant wheat. The summer solstice is here, and marks those, because many of the buildings do mark those. The summer solstice, when it's time to plant, when it's not time, the wet season. And yet everyone wants to take it off that these savages out here that have these, bows and arrows and rocks they chipped out of it, put these things up.